Hello, ladies and gentlemen. How are you all doing, eh? What are we doing with our lives today? Are we feeling good? Feeling happy? Do we love living in England today? Now, yes, another one of those videos which we all see on YouTube's where people are literally complaining about the state of the UK, and for good reason. And for good reason. And I'll just list out one of the reasons. Lack of accountability and lies being peddled by our political establishment. I'm not going to be here and blame Labour or blame the councils or blame a single entity which one can point to and be like, there, that's the problem. Because it's kind of pointless. It's systematic. And I'm at my wit's end because we ain't doing nothing about it. You know, now we have Gary Stevenson. I don't know if you know him. Maybe I'll put a little clip of him right here.
Realise it's actually very simple. Of course we can tax them, and that raises the question, well, why don't we then? And there are a lot of possible reasons why that could be, but I'm going to give you a couple suggested reasons. Number one, Rishi Sunak is the 222nd richest man in the country. He's worth over £700 million. His father-in-law is one of the richest men in the entire world, and he chooses the tax laws. The previous Prime Minister, David Cameron, made £10 million within a year of leaving office, and he made the tax laws. Tony Blair, I think, is worth about £100 million, and he made the tax laws. So we are putting the tax law decisions entirely in the hands of people who are multi-millionaires or maybe even billionaires.
But this guy, all he's advocating for is tax the rich. As if that's going to help anyone. Tax the rich. Tax the rich, man. It's an idea that's been spoken about since, well, 20, at least since I was at university. So it's not a new idea. And most likely it's happened way before that as well. Because, you know, back in the 19th or 20th century, we had tax rates of 90%. And it caused a massive recession in the UK. Now, I wasn't born then, so I can't really speak too much about it. All I can say is what caused Thatcher. And we all know we all hate Thatcher. And I had my fair share of grievances. But at the same time, she did bring back some relative sense of normality back to the UK. So we can credit her for that. Stabilising the country, because the country was in absolute turmoil. Chaos. Now, I think that the events back then are a lot different than the events today, because at least back then we still had manufacturing industry. Even though it was declining, we still had it. It was still available. It was still there. You know, we still had industry in this country. We still had an actual economy that could still grow, and our productivity capacity was still growing every year. So there was still a lot of elements there which were positive overall. Today, we face a productivity stagnation. And I'm not going to show you any statistics because I haven't prepared any, but ultimately, you can Google it. Google productivity of the UK and you will see what it is. Don't just listen to me rambling. Google it yourself. Do your own research. I'm asking you to do something. I'm going to do some work. Yeah, because maybe you'll end up the same conclusion as me. We need to increase productivity in this country because we are ridiculously bad at innovating or at least increasing productivity. And the reason why I'm bad about productivity is because we've recently had a minimum wage increase. If I was to go here on this slide here, there are 3.5 million low-paid workers which saw their wages rise on the 1st of April. Now, I'm not against, low-paid workers increase their pay. But it saw the national minimum wage for 18 to 20-year-olds rose by 16%. And the national living wage. I mean, basically, all the costs of the minimum wage is also going up. So it's now up to £10 an hour. So this represents a significant increase when I started working back in 2017. Now I did actually do the calculations on this. Now I've actually done some analysis on this, and back when I was working in 2017, the minimum wage was £7.5 an hour, corresponding to a yearly salary of around £14,000. In 2025, the minimum wage has increased to £12.21, corresponding to a yearly salary of £22,000. This is a 36% increase in 8 years. And the average salary back in 2017 was £28,000, roughly, and the average salary today is £34,000 or £35,000, an increase of 18%. So you can see the minimum wage actually increasing faster than the average wages. And I'm not even going to mention the impact of fiscal drag. And if you don't know what fiscal drag is, it essentially means that it is staying put, even though inflation is increasing. So if you have wages increasing, but the fiscal drag staying put, then more people will pay more tax. So it's a way for the government to say they're not increasing tax, but effectively receive more tax income. So it's a very cunning way of doing so. And if wages are due in large part to inflation, then this isn't down to productivity growth, it isn't down to increasing businesses or increasing wealth of the country. It's purely down to people trying to catch up to their previously held living standards. So if they can't maintain their living standards by increasing their wealth in proportion to the inflation, they are by default not becoming richer, not becoming more prosperous, and fundamentally, they're poorer. They end up being poorer, which is a story as old as time, it seems. I keep banging on about this, and for some reason, no one's hearing me, or no one cares. Because it seems like in this country we have a very much anti-wealth or anti-rich vibe, and rich is anyone earning above 50 grand, apparently. And that may have been true 25, 30 years ago. But that 50 grand 25 years ago is now worth £80,000 today. So the new, to be in the same wealth or living, quality of life, etc., as you were back in 2000, you'd have to be earning £80,000 to £100,000 today. So that will be the new border, which people will say you're rich. But people mentality has not changed. We still think that anyone above 50 grand is rich. It's richer than perhaps you, but that just means you're poor, and they're slightly less poor. Doesn't make them rich. And all this talk about taxing the rich, which is the story that has been played out for the last 20 years, it doesn't work. It doesn't increase productivity, doesn't increase growth. Our GDP is barely growing despite massive immigration. We are not becoming more productive. We're not becoming wealthier. And maybe you could say, actually, on paper we are, technically. Yeah, okay, maybe some individuals are definitely profiteering out of this. Vast majority of yous are simply not. And who's to blame? Well, you could blame the individuals for not choosing to improve their lives, or you could blame the never-ending plethora of social policies that are being offered on the table. And people say to me, I can't talk about this because I'm not poor. But you don't know me. I come from a background where 90% of my family is on welfare. For some silly reason, I decided to not do that. I took a unpaid job when I first started. I took a degree, a loan to pay for my degree. I'm not saying I come from a working class background, because I don't. My family don't work, so I don't come from a working class background. It's not true, is it? So my brother, he's got the same problem as me, and despite that, he receives around £2,000 a month in welfare benefits. And I thought about this, like, because people keep telling me about the social welfare safety net. The welfare safety net where people can have a reliable income if they get ill or they can no longer work. And I thought about that, and I was like, well, if I lose my job now, I actually don't get anything. I pay all these taxes, and I'm not eligible for a dime because I save money. Over the past 14 years, I've been renting until I managed to finally buy my house, which is what makes people begrudge me and be resentful about it. But I lived in squalor for 14 years. Now, I'm not saying it was a good idea. I'm not saying I enjoyed it. I'm not saying it was great. I'm not saying I'm very appreciative of doing that. Not really. And I'm very grateful now that I have my own house and I can live here, despite owing a massive amount on my mortgage. It's a massive increased expenditure that I have never ever spent in my life before, and I'm getting used to it. It's still not great, feeling trapped for the next 35 years, but so it got me a house in the first place, so I can't complain. But it is harder to get a house, but the solution isn't to tax people. I pay more in taxes than I do my mortgage and bills. Now, I'm not saying that's the reason why you should tax me less, because it's not like I want a bigger house. My house is nice, it's good. Issues with it like every other house is, but it's nice. It's a nice house. It's nice to own something, even though I don't actually own it yet. But let's not go there. The government can simply take it off me. So what's happening today, eh? What's happening? This is a book I'm actually writing about. It's not going to be very politically salient because I'm arguing to abolish the minimum wage. Now I'm not going to talk about this in this video. It's a topic of another day. But fundamentally, I don't see the point of the minimum wage because it's increasing above what the average is. It's not driven by productivity. It's not making it's putting a lot of jobs at risk. Now, in terms of jobs, a lot of people say, yeah, but those jobs don't need to be there. Okay, then you want to have a job. That's the answer, isn't it? But that is ultimately the answer. Now, I look back on my wage. I mean, who determines my wage? Is it the market? What have I done to deserve it? Well, I spent 10 years of my life investing in myself. I don't have, before this debt, I didn't have any debt. I chose to spare the bare minimum on rent. The past 7 years, I was paying maximum £500 a month, all bills included. Maximum. I lived in Brighton, I lived in London, I lived in Leeds, I lived in Loughborough, I lived all over England. Never spent more than £500 a month on rent, and that was in Brighton when I was living there five years ago. Since then, my expenses for rent has been a lot lower, a lot less. The cheapest I was £350 in Loughborough, but it was horrible, absolutely horrible. And I decided to spend a bit more, £400 a month, something a bit nicer. It's actually really nice. I've got to commend the landlord there. That's a very nice landlord. I'm gonna lie, that's very nice. So people hate on landlords. You get, I've had 14 years experience. You get the good and the bad. But the one in Loughborough was actually really nice. I dread to think him being forced to sell his house despite the amount of work and the risk he's taken by letting me live there, for example. So I'm not a perfect tenant. It's not like I damaged anything voluntarily, but I wasn't like I cared about it. No offense to the landlord, I just didn't care about his house. I didn't own it. But it's a risk. Not okay. I want to make it clear. I didn't actively go out there and demolish it, or actively not care. It's just, I got there, a bit of mold on the floor. Don't really care about it. I'm not gonna care about something that I inherited, which is not mine. So I'm not spending any money on doing it up. I'm not spending any time. So it's not. But it's not. It's expected not to, right? So I'm not saying I'm being unusually unthankful, because I am. During COVID, it was great. I like that. It was a nice little place. And then I moved to Leeds, lived in a bit of a squalor. It was all right. The guy was all right, but the sewage broke once, and oh my goodness, I'm just saying. And I can't believe the house next door went for like 250 grand, if not a bit more than that. I'm just like, bro, you live right next to a house, or in your house. I mean, even they were telling me how much money you had to spend on redoing the pipes. Anyway, you pay for, these people, are they considered rich because they got a house? No, I never thought that. I thought they're doing well for themselves. Good for them. They got a house. They had to work really hard to get it. They had to do a lot of work when they got the house too. So good for them. Hopefully it works out well for them. And that's how I see people actually try and make it. They're not on welfare. They're out there working, hustling, grinding, and that's how society should be. But I come from a family where 90% of them are on welfare. My taxes don't even pay for my brother, barely cover my brother's expenses. And I keep saying to my brother, look, I can help you out, but come here then. Pay half what you're spending, less than half what you're spending currently on, because he's spending, was it 1.3 grand on rent down south? I say, come up here. I'll give you a good price, £400. £400, but you go to work. You can go find a job and stuff like that. You won't do that because you lose his benefits. People on benefits are trapped, and you can see the mentality switch from being proactive, responsibly about their behaviour, but then constantly blaming everyone else but themselves for the lack of advancement. And in some ways, I can empathise, but in other ways, I can't. Because they keep arguing for more money. If you want more money, go out there and work. I've got the same problem as him, and I get no safety net. Because I'm like a squirrel, me. I've got no plan B. I've got no family to help me. I've got nothing. So if I want something, I have to earn it. I have to work for it. I have to find a way through which I can earn it. And I'm getting increasingly annoyed because I can't actually earn more money now without being taxed more. Like 40% official tax, but then of course on top of that you've got NIS contributions. It equates to around 50% of my income getting taxed. I work pretty much a week for free, if not more, every month. And all the while I'm seeing, and that's not including council tax, that's not including VAT tax, fuel tax, car tax, you name it, road tax. I mean, the whole list of taxes go up. So, I mean, and on the council tax, they're now increasing it by 10%. 10%. Now, I'm not blaming parties here because the Tories were the ones allowing it to happen, allowing council tax to rise. But Bradford has increased it to 10%. Now, I'm not really sure what to say to this other than, are you getting your money's worth when you pay your council tax? Honestly, are you? And if you say you are, good for you. I'm glad you find it proportionate. For me, I don't see it. If I saw it, I might be less resentful, but I don't see it. And nowadays we're seeing, if you go to Leeds, you see whole streets sometimes piled of trash. And you just got to think, okay, well, why are you paying all these taxes for? Where's that money going? Where's it going to? Why have they accumulated so much debt? Where's the accountability? Let's go through this. Let's go through here. And one of the so it starts here saying last year the authority was granted government permission to borrow more money, sell off its surplus land, but instead of actually dealing with their initial spending problem, they continued it. They just delayed it. So in 2023, 24, borrowed 80 million, and it just increased from there to 570 million. That's estimated value, sorry. Well, if we know this, do we then not try and cut services or cut expenses or cut something that can make any meaningful impact? Because I can't just keep borrowing endlessly. I know a council can obviously leverage higher taxes and this and the other, but this isn't going to backfire because less and less people are now going to move to Bradford, meaning less income. Or actually, some people might actually want to move away from Bradford, which means less income. And you might lose you might lose a lot of people who say, "Well, I'm not going to buy a house in Bradford. I'm going to buy a house elsewhere now because look at this. It's bad publicity. It further exacerbates the problem. This is what you don't want to have happen." I just want people to think about this before giving councils free rides. Because 570 million, is there a plan to reduce that? So Bradford are in excess of £1 billion by 2030, relating to capital projects such as Bradford Live and One City Park. And core services are being paid for by debt. And 20p in every pound will ultimately go towards debt repayment in the future. So you got Birmingham City Council owes almost £3 billion. So stuff like that. It's all these things. We don't want to do this increase in cattle tax, but we know it's the right thing to do. Not just for now, but for the future. Okay, well, yeah, but will we ever see those costs decline? No, you just give them more ability to borrow more money. Again, socialists do not understand how money works. They just think they can just tax people and they'll just keep paying. There's no consequences of bad behavior. Again, we live in a world where we are sheltered from consequences. And this just illustrates the point even further, doesn't it? Anyway, next point. So, and they're even suggesting, and I appreciate this article is 2 months old, but they're even suggesting council tax to rise a further 25%. 25%. And a lot of the cost apparently is down to funding social care. So yeah, down here. So the council has a £180 million hole in its budget, caused largely by the increasing cost of adult and children's care. Now that's a very generic rubric. What does that actually mean? Adult care? What can someone explain to me what that actually includes? Because does that include also children in care homes? Because we have witnessed. I mean, I come from a care home myself. So back when I was born, there were only 25,000 kids in care, and now there's almost 150,000 all across the UK. I mean, You know, I thought to myself, 25,000 people is a lot of people, but now it's way more. I don't see the trend going anywhere other than upwards. And so we're going to likely see more costs like these, which is again unfunded. And why should it be taxpayers' responsibility? Again, I say this knowing fully well that taxpayers paid for me to be here today. So, but I also, by my own logic, I've also agreed that my mother shouldn't have had us. Why, there's no consequence for my mother to have so many kids which she didn't care for. No consequences. They could just pop out kids and no problem. And I'm not even going into the things that happened because it doesn't matter. Well, it does matter to me, but it doesn't matter to anyone else. No one really cares. So what's the point in me saying it? But I've seen firsthand how bad it is. And you just giving more money, it doesn't solve the problem. It doesn't stop making it go away. It just alleviates the symptom, not the cause. Giving them more money is you're basically complicit. You actually say, okay, I'm okay with that. Now, I'm not saying these kids in care don't deserve their money. It's just more of the returns on investment. 25% of people in prisons come from care. And the world of Andrew Tate's and all the rest of it, when you've got a lot of men with lack of direction. I'm not advocating for Andrew Tate. I'm not saying that. I am saying, though, absent of any positive role models for young men, they're going to go towards that. And it's not just people, men in care. It's men at home as well, men with families too, single parent households perhaps. There's a lot more of them out there. With no positive role model, young boys will look elsewhere. I mean, it's common sense. I don't really know why is this controversial. In the back of me, I've got Jordan Peterson. Now, Jordan Peterson's of course, an insult god and whatever but that's what I mean. You attack every kind of person you don't like as an incel or this and the other, and it result. Now we've got film Adolescence, which apparently encapsulates or emulates this kind of behaviour. It's toxic masculinity. It's like, well, no, it's a lack of masculinity that's a problem. It's feminization of men which is a problem. I don't know my place. Men don't know their place anymore, so they're going to act out. They're going to, be upset. Now, I'm not justifying violence. I'm not advocating for it, but I want more people to understand the plight of men. But again, I accept as a man, nobody cares. But then you can't complain then when there's more men acting out and trying to emulate Andrew Tate. Or you can't complain about Andrew Tate to the world. You just can't. You're playing into this system. And you can't expect anything different. Anyway. And again, with the idea of the socialists running the country, well, look at this. You're going to pay a council tax premium on owning a second home. Now, this is, again, it doesn't impact me, so why am I bothering about it? Because I don't own a second home, for goodness sake. But, again, it's the politics of envy, alive and well in this country. And look, on one hand, I agree, but on the second hand, I don't agree. It's not the people living in this country that's responsible for the problems with the supply of houses. Again, we're not going after the symptom, not the cause. The cause is the mass immigration. The symptom is not that people own too many houses. If it wasn't for immigration, we would be a declining population, which means there'd be more houses available, which means we wouldn't have a housing shortage, which means all this talk about, housing shortage wouldn't be happening, wouldn't be a problem. Now we have other problems, of course, but that at least wouldn't be a problem. And we could incentivize people to have more kids. So we don't have a population problem. Now, I know my family have done their fair load of population growth. I've got like 10 siblings, ridiculous amounts. So yeah, I mean, sure. fine. The irresponsible people will have more kids, and you're paying for that through higher taxes. And the responsible people won't have kids because it's too expensive. And that's how you want, and we compensate that with immigrants who apparently are a lot of lawyers and doctors apparently. So hopefully we'll have great healthcare in the next 20, 30 years, which we look forward to have. But yeah, we've got to tax people with two homes. Of course we do, because don't know. So I spoke about national minimum wage, and again, NIS contributions going up by 15%. Labour said they wouldn't raise council tax, and they wouldn't increase taxes, but they are by not raising the tax thresholds, and they wouldn't impact your salaries, which they are by increasing NIS contributions, which is obviously causing a lot of redundancies, and a lot of businesses are choosing not to employ people.
Unfortunately, it's another day where headlines are spelling out just how bleak the picture is regarding employment. Reeves' budget, as in Rachel, Reeves' budget disaster costs one job every 9 minutes. And all experts seem to agree on one thing: it's only going to get worse as a result of yesterday's decision regarding national insurance. Now, if you were listening in the first hour, you heard my LBC colleague, political editor Natasha Clark, share with us the news that had been done by recruitment giant Reed. And here to give us just that headline again is James Reed. He's CEO of Reed. That is Britain's biggest recruitment brand. And this is concerning job listings down, well, more than 20%. Just run through the headlines again, James, and thank you for coming by the studio.
Hello, Nick. Thank you for having me this morning. Yes, regrettably, our job headline is for March down 23%. So vacancies down 23%. And that is obviously concerning. And it's a continuation of a trend that's been going on for some time now. And I remember coming into LBC last December and saying, these statistics were a warning sign, or flashing a red light that we might be headed for a recession. And all the news we've had over the last few days, I'm afraid, makes that more rather than less likely.
We decided to ask you to come in the light of yesterday, obviously the national insurance hike. What's your gravest concern there, James?
Well, I didn't like the national insurance hike in the first place when it was announced, because essentially it's a tax on jobs.
Yep.
And it's getting harder for people to get jobs. Jobs are becoming more scarce. And that increase in that particular tax has made the situation worse. And the timing couldn't be more terrible, really, with what's going on with the tariffs and the stock market crash around the world. So it's piling costs on employers at a time when they're struggling, and that's my chief concern. And I think there's going to be a tough few months ahead, and we've just done a survey of 250 plus employers, and the results of that survey, nearly half, 46%, are cutting back on hiring. They're scaling back their hiring. And almost 2/3 are concerned or very concerned about the impact of this national insurance increase. So it's having a real impact.
Just lastly, before the calls, Andy, you'll be the first caller coming to you in just a moment, sir. The work you did with Reed, the research you did, you're particularly concerned, you and your colleagues particularly concerned about retail and hospitality. Just explain why, James.
Well, retail and hospitality employs very large numbers of people. Typically, they're not very highly paid. And the change in the national insurance that was most important or most impactful on those companies was the reduction in the threshold, which went down to £5,000. So it brought a lot of people into the tax bracket who were not in it before. And that has put a lot of cost on retail and hospitality. And it's put a lot of jobs at risk, frankly. I mean, you just gave that awful statistic.
Yes, I know. You're not surprised by that number either, because I saw you nodding as I read it out.
No, I'm not. I've been worrying about this for some time. I mean, our own survey just now, we learned that 24% of businesses in London are already making redundancies. So this is a live and present danger.
Right, you got the headphones on, get your pen ready, here we go. Andy in Southampton, you're through to James Reed. Andy, what's your question? Good morning.
Morning, James. Morning, Nick. How you doing?
Sir. Yeah, good, thank you. Go ahead.
So, So yeah, and that way the rate that employers pay contributions will rise from 13.8% to 15% on workers' earnings above 175 from April. And the threshold at which employers start paying their tax will decrease to £5,000. Minimum wage is set to increase to 12.21, and business rates are due to expire in April 2025. That will be replaced by a discount of 40%, which means doubling the rates of business rates. And again, it's all compounded with the cost of energy, cost of water, cost of running the business. Everything's going up. So plans to upgrade workers' rights will cost businesses up to £5 billion a year. Now, these won't impact big businesses as much. You know, Amazon, the likes of Amazon and Starbucks and the rest of it, don't care. They can pay. And they'll create a monopoly on the space while small businesses go out of business. Reducing competition. Exactly what socialism is all about. It's about reducing competition and ensuring you can control a few monopolies who themselves leverage higher costs onto their consumers because they can. So you're not going to see a reduction in costs. What you're going to do is going to see a higher and greater increase in costs because small businesses are suffering under this Labour government. Well done. And they're going to increase more taxes on the richest of this country. Of course they are. Of course they are. They're socialists. Increasing taxes does not necessarily equal greater returns, greater revenues for the government. And all I do is urge people to look at the Laffer curve. Because there is a point at which people will refuse to pay or just leave the country, and the people who are the richest are the most mobile. People like me earn just about enough to get by and to survive, have a decent, potentially, hopefully decent pension at the end of it, but not enough to be able to leave. That's a choice we face. So I'm stuck here, but if you earn enough money, you can leave, which is exactly what they are doing. So, super rich flee London. Now, I know people say, I don't pay tax anyway, but they do. That's the problem. They actually do. That's actually a missing problem. It's a lie to say they don't pay tax. They do. They pay a lot more tax than me and you. And the offset or the loss of these men or these people, these women or these people, these millionaires, it's going to lump these additional welfare costs or social policies onto the rest of us. So it's not this problem goes away. It actually will get worse. So we'll invariably see higher taxes. So this is what I'm saying. 35 minutes long. Hopefully this is a short enough video. I just wanted to go through some of these articles and some of the things that have happened the past 6 months because it's looking increasingly, less positive. We're not going the right way. Councils are getting more debt. The government's increasing the debt. We're leveraging higher debt onto future generations, and people are struggling at the moment at a time when it's struggling more because everything's going up once again. I haven't even touched on energy bills increasing. I've not touched on water bills increasing. I've not touched on a lot of things. But, I know for my starters, my wage hasn't increased this year. Inflation's growing again, aiming to be around 5% by July. So my living standard has already decreased. I've not had a pay rise this year, and I haven't had a pay rise commensurate with inflation for the past several years. But most people haven't. That's actually the thing. Most people actually haven't seen a pay rise. Businesses can. Businesses are, fair enough. But the average Joe, most people aren't. So while minimum wage has increased, I don't know, 6-7%, I've not had a pay rise. It's not driven by growth. It's not driven by productivity. It's driven by ideology, which is costing people jobs and costing the economy overall. Anyway, I've not even touched on Trump's tariffs or anything like that. I'll leave that for another video. But I just wanted to air these thoughts out, and hopefully, if Keir Starmer's watching this, just please pay attention. Learn some economics. You don't get rich by taxing people. You don't grow an economy by taxation. And if people are worried about, because I'm worried. If I work more hours, I get taxed more. So what is the point? I get my partner to work more hours, which is just not what she wants. It's not freedom, because she doesn't want to do that. But she agrees, given the fact that we are in a precarious situation. We need the money. To service our debts, we need the money. We need the income. Now, I know you guys want my income, but we actually work for a living. We don't take any benefits. I don't mind working more hours. But at the moment, I don't see any end in sight outside of getting my partner to work more hours. Right, anyway, I've said enough. I'll leave it there. Right, God bless everyone, and if you like my video, please like and subscribe. If you don't, please like and subscribe, and let me know what you think of it down below. Alright, all the best, God bless, see you later.